So, what's going on with the Vizard in Core 4? Look, I'm currently in the middle of my shot-by-shot analysis of the new Core 4 trailer, and it's going to be a fun one. There's quite a lot to talk about, and I'm hoping to have it with you in the next day or two. But when the time came to talk about one specific sequence featured throughout the trailer, well, I realised I had to spin it out into its own video quickly, because it's something I personally wanted to talk about right away. As someone who has a real vested interest in seeing these particular characters not just in action, but maybe even getting some kind of a well-deserved redemption, even going so far as to title my episode 40 live reaction Justice for the Vizard, I feel like this is something I have to address, because as I mentioned in my trailer reaction, which if you haven't yet seen, I implore you to check it out, well, I'm concerned. I am concerned about the Vizard going into the final season. The Vizard as a faction have been dunked on by Kubo pretty routinely at this point, really ever since the fake Karakura Town arc, save for Hachi at least, and since then proceeded to fumble at almost every single hurdle throughout the Thousand Year Blood War arc. Many of the Vizard barely appeared in the arc at all, only to be quickly wiped out when they finally did, while those who played a slightly bigger role experienced an even worse fate, from being almost brutally killed to transformed into zombified slaves for both Shinigami and Quincy Masters. Things have been pretty tough for these guys. And so, even if they aren't necessarily anyone's favourite characters, though I'm sure each of them has their fans, and I think Shinji is very popular still to this day, the community has been desperately hoping for the Vizard to receive their flowers in some fashion, and with all the changes the anime has been pretty liberally making, this seemed like a great avenue to do so. And in the very final episode of Core 3, we were surprised in the best possible way. It suddenly looked like that might actually be happening, going completely against the manga and defying all odds. So now, what's going on? In the wake of the newest trailer, why does it suddenly feel like, despite the goodwill, despite that optimistic cliffhanger in episode 40, that the Vizard's prospects aren't looking too good once again? Let's take a look at a certain sequence in the newest trailer, and dive into why, despite not a single Vizard appearing in said trailer, though that itself could be cause for alarm, it might spell doom for this once beloved gang of holified Shinigami. Of course, before we do get started, consider hitting subscribe if you haven't done already to help push this channel to 300,000 subscribers by the end of the year. It's only going to be possible with your help. If you're new here or you haven't yet hit that button, it is quick, it's free, and it's easy to do. It is a great big help. It really pushes the channel out to more people to get more exposure, and ultimately I'd just love to reach that goal, so thank you all so very much for helping out where you can. And speaking of which, also check out the Patreon link down in the description below as well, to get all of my videos totally free of YouTube ads, and of course to get your name in the credits of every single video as well as a supporter of the channel. It does mean absolutely everything. And one last thing, there will be some spoilers of course for the remainder of the Thousand Year Blood War arc of Bleach in the video to come. Now the end of Core 3 set some mighty, if unexpected, expectations for the Vizard in the final season. You see, the Vizard had it pretty rough in the manga version of the Thousand Year Blood War arc, and I've done my fair share of lambasting them for it as well. Most of the Vizard were totally missing in action for the entire arc. Love, Lisa, Hiyori, and Hachi spent 3/4 of the arc in Karakura Town. Now, admittedly, they were busy. They were trying to seal up the distortions in the world and then collected that energy for Keyescape, but they only returned in full right at the end to help invade Varvelt. After which, they were immediately defeated in a single hit by Sternritter M. Gerard Valkyrie. Meanwhile, the Vizard who became captains didn't fare much better, though they did get more screen time. Rose and Kensei were savagely beaten and almost killed by Mask Demasculine before being zombified by Giselle. After Mayuri took control of them, the two captains weren't seen again in the manga until the post-war epilogue. Shinji admittedly sticks around the longest in the manga, but that's only really because he doesn't do anything of note. He barely seems to get involved. Anything he does do either gets interrupted or it happens off screen, before he is then also unceremoniously defeated in a single hit by, you guessed it, Vizard defeater extraordinaire Gerard Valkyrie. Meanwhile, there's Mashiro. Who's Mashiro again? When it came to the anime, things were looking to follow mostly the same trajectory, though there were some clues that perhaps a little more was actually going on than we realised. And in truth, it did seem that Core 3 in particular was building to something new where the Vizard were concerned. For example, although Rose and Kensei had suffered the same fate as in the manga and were currently showing no signs of returning, the anime team had actually remembered Mashiro existed and reintroduced her into the story after a lengthy hiatus. Not only that, but the other Vizard are actually given something to do, even in Varvelt, with Love, Lisa, Hiyori and Hachi finding the near-death Renji and helping to save his life. And things only got better, would you believe, with the penultimate episode of the Cour. During the sequence where Shinji is defeated by Gerard in the manga, where he is slapped out of existence basically, he and Hinamori in fact continue fighting this time, with Shinji evading Gerard's attack and even blasting him in the face with Hado 91. Sure, they were swiftly taken out after that, but it was something at least, right? Well, little did we know, the anime team had something really special planned. For in episode 40, as a gigantic Gerard tries to hunt down Momo, who has seemingly survived his last attack, he is suddenly assaulted by none other than a de-zombified Rose, in one of the biggest surprises of the anime to date, at least in my opinion, as someone who genuinely likes Rose. Yes, Rose, but also Kensei as well, now free of their ailment, also travelled to Varvelt. But that's not all. Discarding their captain robes, donning their hollow masks, and appearing together as a group for the first time since the time skip, all the Vizard, even going so far as to call themselves that, lined up, drew their swords, and prepared to take on the Miracle in a huge, genuinely shocking upset that looked ready to totally rewrite the early portion of the battle against Gerard. This was a big deal, a really big deal in fact. It felt like a sign that the anime team was actually prepared to do something a little different where the Vizard were concerned, and right some of the wrongs of their portrayal in the final arc. It looked like they might get a group showdown against an enemy who had previously wiped them out with comical ease in the manga. Of course, in the interim, we've all joked about how darkly funny it would be if, after all of that, Core 4 opened with the Vizard lying defeated before Gerard. That would be a great joke, right guys? Right? It would be a joke. That's certainly not going to happen, is it? So, what's the issue? Well, while the trailer didn't show the Vizard at all, and again I said a minute ago that itself could be foreboding, it did show plenty of Gerard Valkyrie himself, and it seems to at least allude to a disappointing fate for the Vizard in general. Now, of course, I'm not stating this outright. I haven't seen the episodes. There's still every possibility it doesn't follow the manga. These are just my speculative thoughts based on what I know from the source material. That being said, there is at least one Gerard shot in this trailer that I did not expect to see, purely because I thought the Vizard section was being rewritten based on the chronology we got in episodes 39 and 40, but instead, I have to assume that whatever new Vizard content we are going to be getting, if any, is simply happening before this manga sequence now takes place, and that their showdown might actually just end in a similar if not the exact same way to the manga itself. But let's actually take a look at the trailer. Although the first few shots of Kenpachi versus Gerard are in a disjointed order, they're all from the same sequence in the same chapter, chapter 667. The first shot we see, the close-up of Kenpachi's eye, comes just before he releases his Shikai. The next shot of Kenpachi leaping towards Gerard is actually from just before this moment in the manga. Kenpachi catches Gerard's foot and throws him backwards, which is why Gerard is sitting on the ground here in the trailer. Kenpachi then leaps at Gerard, as we're seeing here in the trailer, and brings his sealed Zanpakuto toe down upon the Titan, but Gerard blocks it and swats him away with his shield. That then leads to Kenpachi releasing Nozarashi, which is the next shot in the trailer, replicating this image from the manga. The shot of Byakuya and Hitsugaya, meanwhile, is from the preceding chapter, 666, when Gerard suddenly tries to grab them, just before Kenpachi arrives by cutting his arm off. So far, so good. Nothing too out of the ordinary, though it does seem to indicate we are sticking surprisingly close to the manga version of this fight, at least so far. But these are just the early days of the battle. Significant changes are likely to be in the second half or towards the end. Things get a little dicey for the Vizard's fate, however, with the next shot, which depicts Gerard swinging and destroying a towering ice structure. This is actually from a little earlier in the manga, chapter 659 to be exact, even before Askin has been killed, and actually before where we left off the source material in Cour 3, which ended with chapter 661. In the previous chapter, 658, Gerard defeats all of the Vizard in a single hit before moving to annihilate the whole platform that they are on, but Hitsugaya arrives and freezes him in place. The structure that Gerard is destroying in the trailer is the same ice bridge that Hitsugaya is standing on when he arrives on the battlefield. So, what does this mean? If the chronology of the manga has been left the same, then this sequence should happen very, very early on in the Cour, meaning the Vizard are defeated extremely quickly, allowing for Hitsugaya to then intervene and for the manga to resume as normal. Except, as I mentioned a moment ago, chronology has already been thrown somewhat out of the window. This sequence should have already happened based on the chapter count at the end of Cour 3, and is part of the Vizard's defeat in the manga that, as I said, I kind of expected to be removed. It's totally possible, of course, that just because this shot is in the anime, it doesn't mean the Vizard are already down for the count, as they are in the manga. Maybe they'll help fight Gerard alongside Hitsugaya. Considering, though, that earlier we saw the shot of Byakuya and Hitsugaya preparing to face off against Gerard together, it kind of feels like we're moving along with that fight exactly as it happens in the manga. Personally, I am expecting them to switch things up a little bit still. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they streamline the fights a bit, so they play out similarly to how Mayuri vs Pernida and then Kyoraku vs Liege did. In the manga, the early stages of both Askin and Gerard's battles intertwine quite a bit, whereas those two prior fights are totally segmented. So I'm thinking that what's left of that to show, Askin and Gerard's fights, might be untangled here at the start of Cour 4. What I mean by that is maybe the first episode, barring any kind of recap or anything like that, will be entirely dedicated to Askin versus Yoruichi and Kisuke. Maybe the first two even. And then, following Askin's defeat, we will return to Gerard versus the Vizard, whatever form that takes. Anyway, before we move on, there's another interesting point that can be attributed to this shot of Gerard destroying Hitsugaya's ice bridge. Mere moments later in the manga, we see Hinomori carrying the unconscious Shinji. Is he already going to be down for the count here in the anime too by the time this scene takes place? Considering he's already evaded the attack that knocked him out in the manga, it'll be interesting to see. But so far, there's nothing to really imply that the Vizard's fate will, after all this build-up, be exactly the same as in the manga, right? I mean, Hitsugaya has to arrive at some point, though again, it's interesting to see this scene in particular, because the entire reason Hitsugaya freezes Gerard in the first place is because Gerard wants to take down the area that's housing all of the defeated Vizard in order to then take them out of the battle permanently. So again, if Hitsugaya is arriving in the exact same manner here in the anime as he does in the manga, it stands to reason the Vizard have all been defeated. But it's actually the next shot in the trailer which is a little more concerning, as it seems to actively reference the scene of the Vizard's embarrassing one-shot defeat, in a way that's not only simply much more verbatim than I was expecting, but to be honest, like I said, I thought that sequence had been scrapped in favour of something new. And so, speaking of which, the next shot in the trailer sees Gerard slamming his hand into a building. This is taken from chapter 658, where Hiyori and Hachi are hiding from the giant in the wake of his transformation. Gerard notes that it will be impossible to find them now that he has attained his god size, at which point the miracle kicks in and allows him to do just that, because the odds are so enormously stacked against him, destroying the building that they are hiding in. This leads to Hiyori blasting Gerard with the triple Sero before Love, Lisa, and Hachi all attempt to attack him from behind. Gerard then wipes them all out with a single swing of his shield. So it would seem that some version of this sequence is indeed happening in the anime, which again I'm a little surprised by. It's important to know that in regards to the source material sequence of events, this takes place almost immediately after the last time we saw Gerard in episode 39. So basically what I mean is, Gerard in episode 39 is source material. Gerard in episode 40 is brand new stuff. So maybe we're moving right back to the source material again, since this happens immediately after what goes down in episode 39, and funnily enough, the exact same is currently true of the Askin battle as well. Episode 39 featured the kind of cut-off point for the source material, and then what we saw in episode 40 was brand new stuff. But there's simply no shot the stuff in episode 40 is going to be the only new showing for the Vizard, and I refuse to believe they're going to go down in exactly the same way. Of course, the manga version of their defeat obviously does not account for the fact that in the anime they are now all there, including Shinji, Rose, Kensei, and Mashiro too. Unless Gerard now takes all of them out with his one shield swing, which would be laughably horrible. Meanwhile, the final shot of Gerard in the trailer shows him breaking free of Hitsugaya's ice, which takes place in chapter 666, immediately after Askin's death, and long after the defeat of the Vizard. Above all else, though, the most damning aspect of this trailer, in my opinion, is the simple fact that, well, Gerard is totally uninjured. And again, we kind of expected this, right? I mean, barring any dramatic changes to the fight, which it seems like we aren't really getting, at least not early on, Gerard would have to be uninjured by the time he faces off against the captains. It would have been really nice for things to have been switched up to the degree where the Vizard, say, were able to force Gerard to use his Volstendish, for them to have some kind of tangible impact before being wiped out, but that's just not realistic without totally rewriting the battle. Kenpachi's bankai is what gets Gerard to transform in the manga, and that's almost certainly going to be the exact same here. I will say, the fact Gerard is totally unharmed really doesn't bode well for the Vizard's prospects, and actually right now feels a little worse than it did in the manga, considering every single one of them is there and ready to fight this time. Are you trying to tell me that at minimum 4 captain-level Vizard, plus the others, couldn't land a scratch on Gerard, while Kenpachi, Byakuya, and Hitsugaya, powerful as they are that much more capable that they can kill him multiple times? Again, I want to emphasize that there is no doubt the anime team are in a tough spot here. They clearly want to give the Vizard their dues, but they can't really change up the outcome of their involvement either. And when their involvement in the manga achieved literally nothing, well, the same kind of has to be true here too, no matter the new coat of paint you give it. It's the issue that kind of plagues anime filler, right? It's this idea that you can concoct all manner of crazy, earth-shattering stories, but by the time you're done, because this isn't canon, because it's not in the source material, we have to return to the status quo by the end, meaning nothing ever really has a truly lasting impact. Obviously, the Thousand Year Blood War arc anime is different in that it is canon, it's fully overseen by Kubo, he is involved with it, and it's as canon as the manga is as well, but from the very beginning it's been clear that they have been following the foundation, the story beats laid out by the manga pretty much to the letter. So the Vizard are always going to struggle to have any kind of an impact on a character whom in the manga they did absolutely nothing to, because the actual fight is reserved for Byakuya, Kenpachi, and Hitsugaya. And so I was kind of hoping the Gerard fight would maybe be changed up even more substantially than it has already been based on the episode 40 cliffhanger, but so far at least that doesn't seem to be the case. Again, it's totally possible this is maybe all a huge misdirect, and actually the Vizard are involved in a big way against Gerard. Maybe Hitsugaya joins in much earlier while they're all still fighting, and that sequence of Gerard smashing the ice bridge is in the middle of the battle against the Vizard. Anything could be possible, that's what's kind of really exciting. So yeah, after all that, what's actually going on? What could happen in Core 4 regarding the Vizard? The truth is, it doesn't look great for them right now. But again, of course, a minute-long trailer doesn't tell the full story, and we are merely trying to use contextual clues based on our knowledge of the manga. Am I surprised to see scenes from the Vizard's original defeat in here? Yeah, I am, but that doesn't mean that they will play out the exact same way, nor have the same outcome, necessarily. It's totally possible, for example, that even though Hitsugaya, Byakuya, and Kenpachi are all fighting Gerard, just like in the manga, that maybe the likes of Shinji, Rose, and Kensei are all still up and fighting as well. Though, being completely honest, I do kind of doubt it. So, what could the Vizard's battle against Gerard realistically look like? Like I said a moment ago, if the anime splits the first few episodes up by squashing all of Askin's fight into 1 or 2 episodes, and then does the same for Gerard, say starting episode 3 with Gerard versus the Vizard, it could be that they get an entire episode dedicated to them. But again, I kind of doubt it, especially since it looks like they don't manage to hurt Gerard at all. Are we going to get an entire episode of them just doing nothing to him? I don't think so. At best, I think we can maybe hope for a 5 to 10 minute sequence of them getting to show off a little, before they are all kind of swatted away. What does this mean for something like Love's Bankai? Well, it could still be revealed, but we know based on Gerard's lack of injuries, unless of course again the timeline is completely all over the place. Well, again, I seriously doubt it, but we can surmise that even if Love does reveal a Bankai, it isn't likely to achieve much. Again, I kind of feel like, as I said, they'll get a 5 to 10 minute sequence to fight Gerard, which could be pretty awesome to be fair, but ultimately they don't manage to hurt him in any meaningful way before he then defeats them. Based on the fact that certain shots are already in the trailer, I could see Hiyori, Love, Lisa, and Hachi being defeated in the exact same way they are in the manga, before the other Vizard then kind of step up to the plate. Maybe they use Bankai. It would be really nice if Shinji was able to hang on, and even affect the fight using Sakanade or something like that, but I'm not that hopeful. Honestly, the order in which the Vizard are defeated doesn't really matter. They're likely all going down in the end. Again, it's crucial to remember that this is total speculation on my part based solely on a few shots in a trailer and what we know contextually about what goes down in the manga. It's entirely possible the anime will surprise us in a very real, very big, and frankly great way, and I hope it does. It wouldn't be the first time. Hell, as I said at the start, I was incredibly surprised to see all the Vizard return like this in the first place. I just hope it leads to something meaningful. And to be totally honest, ultimately I'm more invested in the end of Gerard's fight than I am the start of it. I really hope that Gerard's fight actually has a conclusive ending this time and he is defeated, maybe through the use of his cross core, but that's a discussion for another time. Alright everyone, that's it for today's video. As always, I do hope you enjoyed it. I hope you took something of value away from it as well. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. How do you think the Vizard are going to fare against Gerard in Core 4 now that we actually have a glimpse of Gerard himself, thanks to this newest trailer. Do you think this new trailer maybe doesn't bode too well for the Vizard based on what we know of the manga, of the chapters that these shots are from? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts down in the comments below. Maybe I'm totally off base, and maybe you're expecting the Vizard to really get a chance to shine in the early parts of Cour 4. If you are, please let me know down in the comments. I'd love to read them. Alright everyone, as always, thank you so very much for watching. Consider hitting subscribe down below if you haven't done already. If you're new here, over 50% of you are still not subscribed. I know you're watching, it's not that hard to hit the button, so please do consider doing so today to try and help us reach 300,000 subs. I'd really appreciate it. Check out the Patreon as well. We've had a recent influx of new Patreon supporters, and again, you're all appreciated so very much. Thank you all. Everyone appearing on the screen right now is helping to keep the lights on here at the channel, so again, thank you all so very much. It does mean the absolute world. Alright everyone, thanks again for watching. Until next time, we'll catch you later, and I'll see you then. Honestly, in the spirit of talking about the Vizard, even this video is something of a facetious half-joke at the end of the day, because I am kind of expecting them to just be defeated, to be honest. I don't really know what I'm genuinely hoping for, but I guess we'll see.